Hello and welcome to the very first Power Platform Clinic. I'm Duncan Boyne, and joining me today is my glamorous assistant, Ian Tweddie. And when I say glamorous assistant, what I really mean is all-round Power Platform genius. I'm just riding his coattails at this point, let's be honest. Today we're diving into two juicy Power Platform questions sent in by real people with real problems, just the way we like it. Here's what's on the agenda. How do you decide between a calculated column and a measure in Power BI? And can you show or hide tabs dynamically in a model-driven app? Let's jump in, and if you've got any burning Power Platform questions of your own, you know where to find us.
My name is Ian Tweddie, and I'm a senior technical consultant. I've got more than 30 certifications, and I've got probably more than 6 tools published around the Power Platform.
And I'm Duncan Boyne. I am a data and applications analyst for a manufacturing company. I previously worked as a functional consultant at a Microsoft partner, and I have one certificate, which is pale in comparison. I need to do more. I'm jealous.
Today I'm going to show you about how to show and hide apps in a model-driven app. So let me share my screen. What I've got here is I've got my model-driven app. And what I want to do is I want to show and hide another tab based on the status of something. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how this works, and then I'm going to show you how to do it yourself. So if I come up here, what I've done is I've set a tab to appear when the status reason changes. So I want active status reason 1, and it's just a name I gave it. There's nothing special about that. And when I change it to active status 2, we should see a tab appear. Just like that, we've got another tab. So if I click into it, we've got some data, and press save. If I come out of it, change back on, vanishes. So you can control tabs that appear based on a status reason. How do I achieve this? We come and look inside of Visual Studio Code. So I'll drop a link to this repository. So this is available on my GitHub account into the video at the end. But what we've got is we've got a script saying show and hide based on status reason. So first of all, we've got a function, and we're calling a function toggle by status reason. And you can take this and you can edit it according to your own needs. First thing it does is it gets the form context, then it gets the status reason, and then it gets the tab and decides whether or not to show and hide it based on the values. So we can see here, if the status reason is value 1, which is, the out-of-the-box active status that I renamed, it's going to set it to false. If the status reason is 304880001, which is obviously a custom status reason I've created called status 2, sets it to true. So therefore, it's going to show the tab. So it's a very quick little bit of JavaScript, quite easy to edit. So let's give that a go.
What are some common use cases for this? Where would an end user want to use this?
So if you've got a business process flow, or you're only wanting whole tabs to be available at particular points in a record. So if a record is traveling through 5 or 6 statuses, you may not want a whole tab. Instead of going through and individually hiding all those fields, you may want the whole tab to vanish, or you may want the whole tab to appear, just to clean things up. You don't have to drive it on status reason. You could drive it on any other field you want inside your model-driven app.
Awesome.
So I come into this main form. I've got this JavaScript snippet here called, and let's just remove it. And let's remove this one so I can show you it working. Right, I've got no events, that's good. So if I come to add this, let's add it again from scratch. So if I get Control-A, copy, I go to the Maker portal. I click on web resources inside the solution. What I'm going to do is I'm going to upload a new web resource. Now, you can copy and paste the code in here, which is quite handy. So I'll just drop that in there. And then I'm going to select what file type it is. So this one's JavaScript. And I'm just going to grab that name. What I'm going to do is, because I've already uploaded this, I'm just going to put a 2 at the beginning so I can see which one it is. It's not very professional, but it's just obviously a very quick way of seeing which one it is because I have already done this. Let's save that. And then if I come back to the form, I click on Add Library. If I search for this, you can see it's popped up there. So if I click on it and click on Add, now if I save and publish, nothing's going to happen. So let's save and publish this, and you can see that nothing's going to happen.
What are some common things that could go wrong while doing this? What should people look out for in case they've made a mistake on one of the stages or not expecting something to happen when it happens?
Well, I'm going to make a deliberate mistake right now, and that is I haven't told my form when to execute this JavaScript. So if I come onto this page now, we can see, regardless of status, tab 3 is showing. So, but I've loaded my JavaScript on. Shouldn't it just work? No. Nah, way too easy. So what I need to do is I need to come down to here, on load, and I need to add something called an event handler. Now, when you do this, you need to make sure you've got the form selected, which is sometimes a bit of a pain to select. So you don't want one of these objects selected. You need the whole form selected, and it'll be indicated here where it says main form. Then you want to click on events, and we want an on-load event because when the form loads, we want to do something. But if you're doing something else, you can do it on save. But for this one, on load, because we want to hide it when it loads. And we're going to click on event handler, and then it's already showing up what's been added over here. So it says I can run anything from this JavaScript. What do you want to run? So what I need to do now is I need to pop in the name of the function, and that'll be toggle by status reason. So I'm just going to pop that in there. And then do you see here it says pass execution context as first parameter? Now that's also important because into our JavaScript function, it's almost like a magic box. We've got to pass some stuff into it. We've got to tell it some things. Mainly, we've got to tell it some stuff about the form. And you can see that here, execution context. So we need to make sure we tick that box. If it's not working for some reason, come back and make sure you've ticked that. We don't need to pass it any other values for this particular one. And I'm just going to press done. And then we're going to press save and publish. Now, the other gotcha, particularly in a web browser, is Control F5. So although you've published, you'll often find when you come here, when you refresh, hasn't really worked. That's because you need to press Control F5.
I'd refresh.
Yep. And you can see there it works straight away. So just Control F5. Make sure you've published and then Control F5. Or, you know, on my particular keyboard, it's like Control Function F5. And then you go, oh, look, status reason 2. Hang on a minute. That's not worked, has it? That was working a minute ago and that stopped working. Second thing we need to do, well, I'll tell you what, let's try saving it and refreshing. Let's see if we can get it to work. If I save and I refresh, it's there. So why is that not working? What's gone wrong? I'll show you. So we've also got to register an on-change event. Now, what an on-change event does is when something's changed in this form, fire this JavaScript again. So when you change a value on the form, fire this JavaScript. So fire this toggle status by reason so it can rerun it. Otherwise, it'll only run when the form loads, which is not much good to us.
So could you do an event handler on save? So when you change the status of the toggle, it then refreshes anyway?
Well, then you'd have to press save, but you could do a save and then a refresh. It's not very common, but you could do like a save and a refresh. But so if I did register event on change, so what I need to do for this one is I need to pass it back in the same way. So same JavaScript, pass in the function, and we also once again need to pass the execution contacts in. So I press done. So we've got 2 events in our onload. Now I'm going to save and publish. Now, Duncan, what do I need to press when I go back to my form?
You need to press Control F5.
Yeah, let's do Control F5. And when I change the status reason now, you can see it's immediately executing. Now, another way we can test that is I've got some console logs running, which, if you use this in anger, you may want to remove. So I open up my dev tools, which don't want to open right now. There we go. Open up my dev tools. If I look at my console, we can see this start, show, hide, status reason, retrieve, contacts. Value retrieved was 1. Tab 3 found. Status reason is status 1, hiding tab 3. So what I've done in order to help people understand how this is working is I've added some console logs in to tell you what it's up to. So it's starting. We're going to retrieve that form context, telling you what the status is it's retrieved. Found the tab, and then it tells you based on the if statement what it's going to do on that tab. So I've done that really to help people pull it apart. If you do run this into production, you'd usually remove a lot of those console logs because it just makes the thing a bit messy. But if we go back, you can see every time I change it, it runs. And also when I refresh the page, it runs as well. There it is.
404s. No one wants to see those.
I know there's an awful lot of them, isn't there? It's I've noticed that MDA has a lot of them kicking around. So that's an answer to the first question. If I stop sharing my screen, we've got a second question. This one's for you.
For me? How
exciting. You ready?
I am ready.
How do you decide between a calculated column and a measure in Power BI?
Excellent question. I have got a little demo to show us today, so we can go through a couple bits and then just some further bits and pieces just to talk about when to use each, the repercussions of using either of them, and how they can affect the model. So as you can see here, I pulled in some data from a little Excel sheet I had, just one table, some columns and rows, just very basic stuff, the product name, category, unit price, quantity. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a calculated column and then 2 measures, and just to see how they actually affect your data table. So if we go right ahead and go into new column, I'm going to do my best Art Attack or Blue Peter impression. Say here's one I prepared earlier, and give that a go. So let's go for sheet 1, and we're going to look at the unit price, and we're going to put sheet 1 in here as well. And this calculate column is going to put onto each individual row the total price. So the quantity times by the unit price. This can be useful in so many different ways when trying to have a extra bit of data that you need for certain tables. You can dynamically add 2 values together, be that in text or in values, such as what we've done now with the total price. But if you wanted to say, I want a new column that says gadgets widget A with a hyphen in between, or even if we're looking at things like email domains, if you've got if you're creating emails on a dummy site, if you're trying to get some dummy data to present, you could have first name in one column, last name in another. You coalesce those two together and then add at google.com, wherever you want to do it, and created a new column. So let's go ahead and create our measures as well. I've got two measures here and just need to change the table names on these. I would have typed these all in manually, but people are watching and no one's allowed to type when people are watching because you're obviously going to do it wrong, aren't we? It's just the way. As soon as someone sits with you and you're trying to type, it all goes out the window. Everyone knows that. Can't even spell your own name. So let's add another one here. So sheet 1 and sheet 1. Awesome. So this measure is the same as what we were doing for the total price calculator column. It is just looking at the unit price versus the quantity, but it's actually taking all the information from the table rather than just row by row. An average order value, as you can imagine, is taking the value of each of those rows and then making an average from it. So if we go onto our report, we can have a quick look at some of these. So if we grab a table, and we are going to just want to look at customer name, we're going to look at the product, and then we are going to look at total price. And this works well with the calculator column. The total is correct. There is a slight bug in Power BI at the moment where if you're using a measure, sometimes totals aren't correct, but that is a story for a different day, although it has worked correctly here as well as the average. So as we look at this, we are going to look at why we would use each one and why some use cases push towards columns, whereas some of us go for the measure route. Calculate columns are stored in the model. They are physically increasing the size of your data set. It's adding data on top of what you've already got. You are adding that extra row, you're adding all those extra values, and it's stored there. And it's stored in your model. Whereas measures are calculated on the fly. They are literal equations that are happening when they are needed. There is no, you are just having a single line of code or however long your measure is. I've had some very long measures over the years. And it is calculating that on the fly. So if you're using a lot of calculator columns, you are going to bloat the size of your model. And when you bloat the size of your model, refresh time can be a killer. If you've got multiple calculator columns, you could be adding 10, 20, 30% on top of your refresh time. And if you're going for quite a lightweight model and a quick refresh time, you need data quite quickly, but you don't want to go the direct query route, then you're going to have to try and take some of them calculator columns out and try to use a different way. When we look at reusability and flexibility, measures, I feel, are more reusable. You can use the same measure across multiple visuals, slices, and filters, and it will respect the context of what's happening. Calculator columns are static, unless, of course, the data changes, and they do not respond dynamically to slices in the same way. So measures adapt, and calculator columns sit there and look pretty. That is the analogy for that. When a calculator column is the only option, a few examples of where you have to use a calculator column, when you need a categorical value for slicing, like creating buckets like low, medium, or high, or if you're looking at the aging of invoices. So if you want to cut things into 0 to 30 days, 31 days to 60, a calculator column is going to work that out and be better. And when you need that calculator column for a relationship, as with Power BI, with any database or data storage, you are looking for relationships between tables. So with a measure, you can't have that relationship. That can't be linked from one to the other. Whereas a calculator column, if you have a record that has, like we said earlier, about the product and the category, if you are merging both of those and then you have a category table, you could use that as the primary or foreign key, if you're talking in database terms, but that can be the link between the two, whereas you can't do that with a measure. Also, when you need the result in row context before any filters are applied. So if you want it in like the table format I'm showing, if you need that before any filters are applied, that's a good use for a calculate column. Measures are perfect for aggregations and KPIs. Totals, averages, running sums, actually doing the equation side of things. If you need raw value, raw data, you go for the calculate column route. If you need to do some thinking and actually some maths based on it, go the measures route. Yeah, that is my TED talk on calculate columns versus measures. Yeah. Any questions from you, Ian? Go on.
Are there any times when they give you like misleading answers because you've chosen one over the other, and then it's giving you a misleading answer in a visual? Or are they always going to calculate up the same?
So with measures, there are ways that the model can get confused on the context of the measure. And I'm going to do is add a slicer here and see if I can actually get that to happen. So let's go for, let me have a look.
Just thinking, is there a way we can get it to give us misleading information, and how can people be aware of that? I suppose is my thinking.
That is a very good question, and there are scenarios, and I've got scenarios that are built in reports that do have that effect on them because measures don't necessarily work correctly in a table or a matrix. In fact, let's change this to a matrix and see if we can get it to break. I don't think we will. No, I'm just talking to you, Ian. I'm going to have to build a scenario where that does break and then bring it back in.
Well, no worries. We can cut to it. We can cut to it and you go, yeah, no, and then we can go, no worries. Yeah, I've got another example where that happens. Put you on the spot there a bit. Sorry.
No, you're fine, because there is like I could if I was allowed to work from my work ones. I've got ones where I'm fighting with that on a table at the moment because it's there's a guy on LinkedIn posts about it every day. He's like, but the problem has been there for 10 years. It's not one that they've actually ever tried to fix, or they don't know how to fix. Let's reset. Do you want to ask any more questions? Should I? How do you want to do that?
What other question can I ask? Yeah. Is it?
I want you to ask, how would you organize measures and calculate columns? Because as a best practice, you put measures into a individual table called measures table, and you calculate columns have to stay on the table. That's what I want you to ask.
Okay. Is there any way you should organize your measures? And is there a particular place you should create them? Should you create them on a table, or should you create them on a separate table? And I'm assuming calculated columns must have to go in the table that they're calculating from. And can they calculate things in other tables? So yeah, I suppose there's quite a few open-ended questions there.
Excellent question. So from a best practice point of view, I would always create a measures table. Having measures stored together allows you to then put them into folders. If you've got quite a lot of measures and you want different subsections, which one? So you could have an averages one, you could have a totals one, you could have a. I often create, on most of the reports I do, I create a greetings folder. I do dynamic measures based on the user that's logged in. Check the time of day to say good morning, good afternoon, as well as data refresh times, which are all dynamic measures that I would store centrally in the measures table, so that handing over that file to anyone else, or anyone else having to look at that file, is in an organized manner and they can get to it. Calculate columns do have to sit on the table they are referencing. You can do related calculate columns where it pulls in data from other tables, but it has to be on a table that it's related to. So if I had sheet 1 and sheet 2, you've got a calculate column that's looking at sheet 1 and sheet 2, it would have to be in one of those two. It couldn't then be in a measures table. It couldn't be on sheet 3. It has to be on one that it is referencing.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Most welcome. And that wraps up our very first episode of the Power Platform Clinic. Big thanks to Ian for being the brains of the operation, and to you for watching, nodding along, or maybe shouting and screaming when something went slightly wrong. I blame myself for that. If you've got your own Power Platform pain point, something weird, broken, just confusing, come on the show. We promise to be kind, mostly helpful, and with a dash of sarcasm. So drop us a message, leave a comment, or send a carrier pigeon. We're not really that fussy. And over to you, Ian.
Yeah, thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. And if you can, reshare as well. That's even better. And other than that, just stay safe. Thank you.